All right, today, amid just the blitz of headlines on what has been a gigantic news day following a gigantic news week, you might not have noticed the news today. You might not have seen the headline today that today a federal court blocked the Trump administration from cutting energy funding just for blue states. This is billions of dollars Congress appropriated for clean energy projects of various kinds all over the country. Trump administration decided, and they admitted this, they decided that just in blue states, just in states that didn't vote for Trump, they would cut all of that funding. They'd leave the funding in place in states that voted for Trump. They would cut it in states that didn't vote for Trump. A federal court today ruled that that is illegal and stopped the Trump administration from doing that. That ruling today came after another federal court today stopped Trump from shutting down a big offshore wind farm in Rhode Island and Connecticut. Trump's shutdown of that project, according to the courts today, was also illegal. And so yet another federal court blocked Trump on that as well, so that work on the wind farm will be able to go ahead. Both of those rulings today follow last night yet another federal court blocking Trump, this time from cutting funding to the American Academy of Pediatrics. This is a doctors group, a pediatricians group that criticized.
Good evening. Tonight, the halls of the United States Capitol are echoing with a word we haven't heard with this much intensity in years: resignation. We are witnessing an unprecedented escalation in the standoff between the White House and the legislative branch. Today, a coalition of high-ranking lawmakers stood on the steps of the Capitol and issued a formal demand for President Donald Trump to step down from office. This isn't just political theater. It is a direct response to a series of legal and constitutional crises that have pushed the American government to a breaking point. As a journalist covering these events, I can tell you that the atmosphere in Washington is electric. The phrase constitutional crisis is often overused in our modern era, but today it feels like the only accurate description. We are seeing a president who is reportedly incensed, reacting with what many are calling a total public meltdown, while lawmakers from both sides of the aisle are forced to decide where their loyalties lie, with their party or with the Constitution. Let's look at the why. Why now? This demand for a resignation didn't happen in a vacuum. It follows a week of intense pressure following the latest developments in the federal courts and the fallout from the Georgia election cases we've been tracking.
Insane quackery at Trump's Department of Health and Human Services under RFK Jr., Trump responded by canceling federal grants for the American Academy of Pediatrics. A judge has now ruled that that was illegal retaliation, and so Trump is blocked from doing that. That funding has to be reinstated. That ruling comes after another federal judge just blocked Trump from cutting off federal election funds to states in retaliation for them not changing their election rules in ways that Trump wants. The judge said, quote, "The Constitution assigns no authority to the president over federal election administration." And so Trump got blocked on that one, too. Shall I keep going? I could keep going. Another federal court just blocked Trump from freezing billions of dollars for childcare and social services for kids, again, in Democratic-run states as some kind of punishment.
Lawmakers, led by members of the House Judiciary and Senate Oversight Committees, are citing irreparable damage to the office of the presidency. They are pointing to recent admissions from former legal advisors and new evidence that suggests a pattern of executive overreach that they claim is no longer sustainable. When we talk about a meltdown, we aren't just using a catchy headline. We are referring to the unfiltered early morning communications coming directly from the president. On Truth Social and in spontaneous press gags, the president has lashed out at his enemies within the government, calling the lawmakers traitors and insurrectionists against the will of the people. This level of rhetoric from a sitting president toward the co-equal branch of government is, quite simply, without historical parallel. From a journalistic perspective, we have to analyze the strategy behind these demands. Lawmakers know that a president cannot be forced to step down simply because they ask. However, by making this public demand, they are setting the stage for something much more serious: the reopening of impeachment proceedings or a push for the 25th Amendment. They are moving the needle of public opinion, trying to force moderate Republicans to take a stand. The names behind this demand are significant. We aren't just seeing the usual suspects from the far left. We are seeing centrist lawmakers, the ones who usually avoid the cameras, saying that they can no longer remain silent in the face of executive defiance. They are arguing that the president's refusal to acknowledge judicial rulings and his continued attacks on the legal system have made it impossible for the government to function. But let's look at the president's response more closely. For Donald Trump, the best defense has always been an overwhelming offense. By reacting with such fury, he is signaling to his base that this is the final battle. He is casting himself as the victim of a legislative coup. As an analyst, I see this as a calculated move to solidify his support. He knows that as long as his base remains energized, Republican lawmakers in the Senate will be terrified to vote against him. This is a game of political chicken, and the stakes are the stability of the republic. What does the law actually say? This is a point of confusion for many. A demand to step down carries no legal weight. It is a resolution of sentiment. To actually remove a president, Congress must go through the impeachment process, a process we know all too well. But the lawmakers making this demand are claiming that the traditional rules have been broken, and that they are prepared to take extraordinary measures to protect the rule of law. One of the most damaging aspects of this current meltdown is the impact on the global stage. Our allies are watching, and our adversaries are waiting. When the President of the United States calls the U.S. Congress a criminal organization, it weakens the very idea of American democracy. In my time reporting on international affairs, I've seen how domestic instability invites foreign aggression. This isn't just about a personality clash in D.C., it's about the national security of the United States. Let's talk about the evidence lawmakers are using to back up their demand. They are pointing to the insider testimonies we discussed in our previous analysis, lawyers like Jenna Ellis and Kenneth Chesebro, who have admitted to criminal conduct. The lawmakers' argument is simple. If the president's own legal team admits that the strategy they executed on his behalf was criminal, then the president himself is the beneficiary of those crimes. They are calling it a criminal enterprise in the Oval Office. The White House press office has been in damage control mode all day, but their statements are being drowned out by the president's own social media posts. This is the central conflict of the Trump era, a professional staff trying to maintain the advice of counsel defense, while the president himself undermines that defense by admitting he was the one driving the decisions. It is a legal nightmare for his defense team. We must also look at the role of the vice president and the cabinet. There have been whispers, unconfirmed but persistent, of 25th Amendment discussions. This is the section of the Constitution that allows the cabinet to remove a president if he is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office. To be clear, as of this recording, there is no evidence that the cabinet is actually moving forward with this. But the fact that the conversation has moved from the fringes of the internet to the halls of Congress tells you everything you need to know about the severity of this moment. As a journalist, I have to ask, where does this go from here? If the president refuses to step down, which he almost certainly will, what is the next move for these lawmakers? They have essentially declared war on the executive branch. If they don't follow through with impeachment or a total freeze on the president's agenda, they risk looking weak. But if they do push forward, they risk tearing the country apart even further. The reaction from the American public is just as fractured as the government itself. We are seeing protests in front of the Capitol and counter-protests in front of the White House. This is the boiling point that analysts have been predicting for months. The demand for a resignation has acted as a catalyst, forcing every citizen to decide whether they believe the system is working or whether it has completely collapsed. In the midst of this meltdown, we also have to consider the upcoming elections. Lawmakers are highly aware that the 2026 midterms are on the horizon. For Democrats, this is an opportunity to frame the entire election as a choice between the law or Trump. For Republicans, it is a test of loyalty. Can they survive a primary if they don't defend the president? Can they survive a general election if they do? These are the cold political calculations happening behind the scenes. I want to spend a moment on the specific rhetoric the president is using to attack these lawmakers. He isn't just calling them names, he is questioning their right to exist as a co-equal branch. He has suggested that the people should decide who is in charge, implying that the legislature is an obstacle to the popular will. This is a classic populist move, But in a constitutional democracy, it is a direct challenge to the checks and balances that have held this country together for 250 years. Let's compare this to previous moments in history. We think back to Nixon in 1974. In that case, it was a delegation of Republicans who went to the White House and told Nixon he had no support left. That was a controlled resignation. What we are seeing today is the opposite. This is a public, loud, and angry demand from the opposition, met with public, loud, and angry defiance from the president. The old guard way of doing things, private meetings and quiet exits, is dead. We are in the era of maximum noise. From my investigative desk, I've been looking into the documents that these lawmakers claim justify their demand. They are citing a pattern of obstruction that they say has reached a tipping point. They claim that the executive branch is refusing to comply with subpoenas, refusing to provide budget details, and essentially operating as a shadow government. These are serious allegations that, if proven, go far beyond traditional politics and enter the territory of constitutional violations. The meltdown we are seeing isn't just about anger, it's about fear. In my experience, when a powerful figure lashes out this way, it's because the walls are closing in. The president is watching his former allies take plea deals. He is watching the courts reject his claims of absolute immunity. He is watching the legislative branch start to move in unison against him. The defiance we see on social media is the reaction of a man who knows he is running out of options. As we continue this daily news analysis, we have to keep our eyes on the Senate. The House can demand a resignation all they want, but the Senate is where the real power lies. If the Republican leadership in the Senate begins to distance themselves from the president, that is the true signal that the end is near. So far, the leadership has been quiet, but in Washington, silence is often louder than words. They are waiting to see which way the wind blows. I've spoken to constitutional scholars about this today, and their consensus is grim. They say we are in uncharted waters. There is no roadmap for a president who simply refuses to acknowledge the legitimacy of the other branches of government. The system is built on the assumption that everyone will follow the rules. When one side decides the rules no longer apply, the system begins to fail. So, where do we stand tonight? We have a president who is reportedly in a state of high agitation, reacting to a direct challenge to his authority with unprecedented vitriol. We have a group of lawmakers who have staked their careers on a demand for his resignation. And we have a country that is watching the great American experiment face its greatest test since the 1860s. This is not a time for sensationalism. It is a time for facts. And the fact is that the relationship between the president and the Congress has been severed. There is no trust left. There is no cooperation left. There is only the struggle for power. As a journalist, my job is to report the truth without the spin. And the truth is that the United States government is currently in a state of internal war. We will be monitoring the White House all night. We will be watching for more Truth Social posts, more leaks from the cabinet, and more statements from the Capitol. This is a fast-moving story, and the meltdown we are reporting on now could be the prelude to something even more significant by tomorrow morning. In conclusion, as you watch the news tonight, don't just focus on the loud voices and the angry tweets. Focus on the institutions. Watch the courts. Watch the Congress. Watch the Constitution. Those are the things that will decide the future of this country, regardless of who is in the Oval Office. The lawmakers have made their move. The president has made his response. Now, the system will have to decide if it can withstand the pressure. This is Daily News, and we are committed to bringing you the most in-depth, professional analysis of the events that are defining our era. We don't bring you rumors. We bring you the reality of power and the law. Stay tuned as we continue to break down this historic standoff. I'm your name, and I will see you in the next update. Good night and stay informed.